So I get asked all the time, am I afraid of sharks when I go spearfishing? And the answer is not really. There are other creatures that I find a little bit more annoying and potentially more dangerous, and there's no better person to talk about it than Brett Whitman, who has 20 years of diving experience, as well as in a past life used to train dolphins, so he understands animal behavior. So in this video, we're going to cover all the creatures you need to watch out for. Brett, now take it away.
Dangerous fish, right? Dangerous animals, whatever we want to talk about. Dangerous marine life, okay? So, number one, sharks. People say, they always ask you how many times you've seen sharks, or they exist, they're in the ocean, they're a problem, they can be a problem. Some places, like here, they're really not that bad of a problem here in Southern California, although we do have our moments, okay? So, let me talk about sharks really briefly. There are sharks out there, like I said, and if you're hunting in the tropics, there tends to be a much higher density of sharks, right? You want to minimize the amount of time that fish is flopping around and fighting and all that, making noises to attract more sharks and get them kind of fired up in a feeding frenzy. We typically hunt right in the mornings or in the evenings. That's when, golden hour, the dawn, whatever it is, that's when usually the feeding kind of time gets going for sharks and any other predators. That's why we're there, right? So if you shoot the fish, make sure when you pull the trigger, you're able to subdue the fish quickly, right? Make sure it's a good ethical shot so you can pull the fish in and not have to worry about it flopping around a long time. Secure it and kill it quick, right? Dispatch it as quickly as you can. Why? If you don't, that tends to take those reef sharks, especially in the tropics, and gets them fired up, right? So the quicker you can secure the fish, a lot of times what my personal experience is that they mellow out really quick and then get the fish out of the water. Take that out of the environment. Some places, sharks, they behave differently on other reefs and other places for sure. Like, so for example, is if we call it a fish stringer, you carry a fish stringer around your waist, you put your fish in it when you shoot them. But what I've noticed in some places, that's a good thing. In some places, you'll get eaten doing that. So places like Guam, where we dive, a lot of reef sharks, they typically will stay away from you. They'll be like, well, this guy's bigger than me. I don't want anything to do with him. Now, if you were to try that same thing in Hawaii, that might get you eaten. Reason being is, I guess the sharks are a little more aggressive there, but tiger sharks, right? So the idea is we put our fish stringer with our fish on the float so that if a big tiger were to come, they end up eating the fish off the float and not on you. So, having said all of that, though, your number one rule as a spearfisherman is protect yourself, right? Be safe. Number two, really, is you do not want sharks to get used to you providing them with fish. So, do everything you can in your power to secure your fish safely and keep it out of their mouths, right? Things that attract sharks, right? Chumming, the sound of pulling the trigger on a spear gun, okay? Strumming your bands, a fish dying, a fish flopping on the surface. Sometimes fishes make noises like when they're dying, and I've seen that before. And two, gray reef sharks come flying in after them. So the biggest thing is just secure the fish and get it out of there. Now, if you're in an area and there's a ton of sharks around, probably, decide if is it possible even land this fish, or should we just move and change locations? Sometimes you can never get away from it, so it's just kind of part of life. But then it becomes more about reading the fish and the sharks than necessarily avoiding them. So that's kind of my 2 cents on the shark thing. However, here though, in the tropics at least, here in the Southern California area, we have great whites, right? And a lot of other places in the world, we have great whites. The way I combat that, we have 7 gills as well. Our sharks that we have here are like 7 gills, mako sharks, great whites, blues, thresher sharks. Really the biggest concern, we run into makos offshore a little bit, jumping on patties and things like that. They're a little bit more higher. They swim a little faster, but really haven't had that many issues with them at all. But, the bigger issue here is the 7 gills because they have poor eyesight and usually they're coastal and the visibility here isn't that great. So we're diving, and if you keep a white sea bass on you or a fish on you with a shark around that is poor eyesight, you could get bit. So I typically shoot one and try to get it out of the boat, out of the water on the boat, excuse me. So 7 gills, that's the way I deal with 7 gills. If there's a bunch around, I'll just kind of hold off and wait before I pull the trigger, especially in poor visibility, which sometimes could lead you to not getting a fish, but better that than that's hunting, right? Then come home with a chunk of your thigh missing. So in regards to great whites, right? White sharks are becoming more and more popular here, and they're becoming, they're just more present. One way I kind of try to combat that is I'll dive in places where the visibility is typically pretty good and away from sea lions, although it's hard to get away from sea lions quite a bit. So if I am going to be around sea lions, I try to pick my battles and have good visibility. The reason being is that there's ambush predators, and if they can see, they don't necessarily know what you are. One thing I can say about sharks and all this, and I'm kind of rambling here, one thing I'll tell you about sharks is they really want their prey item. They're very specific. They want fish, especially reef sharks. They want their fish, and that's what they want, okay? Great whites, they want sea lions, marine mammals, especially when they get over 10 feet. They start switching their diet over from rays to marine mammals. Big makos, the same. They don't know what the hell you are. They don't know what you are. So when you have good visibility, that works for you. They're more inquisitive. Once you see them, their cover is blown, and they kind of will just take off for the most part. Again, every animal's different, but these are my little rules that I stick to, okay? Now, the next animal we're talking about is sea lions. I was a sea lion trainer for years, and I can tell you that those animals are very smart. They know what they're doing, and they're a pain in the ass if they want to be. So diving around sea lions, again, it's becoming harder and harder not to. But if there's a bunch of sea lions around, I'll pick my battles. I know when not to pull the trigger and when to pull the trigger, because the sea lion will grab your fish and it will drag you around and tow you, and you could drown. So the idea is you pull the trigger, you take a good ethical shot, kill the thing if possible, grab it, bring it in as quickly as possible, and get it out of the water. Sea lions, though, I've had them try to come in the boat, actually, and chase after into the boat, which that's a whole nother topic. And if that stuff starts to happen, it's probably best just to move location, because you're going to have big problems when you get in the water. So sea lions, again, hold off until you know it's okay. Don't let those things get the fish. Fight like hell. Even keep a hold of your shaft or the stock of your gun, your butt of your gun, anything. You might have to hit them and give yourself a fighting chance to get back, okay? So be cognizant when you pull the trigger. Sea lions will take your fish, and you might have to cut it sometimes so that you can get the hell out of there. I've had a friend get towed through the water with a sea lion, and he ended up getting it back. He fought and got it back, but I thought he was going to have to cut his line because I was worried about him getting drowning, essentially. So sea lions, problem, just be aware. Also, sea lions equal what? What eats sea lions? Sharks, right? If you're going to dive around sea lions, like I said before, make sure you got at least good visibility, right? So minimizing the risk. It's obviously a dangerous sport. Try to minimize the risk as much as possible, all right? So having said all of that, we'll go to rays. Always say shuffle your feet. If you do get tagged by a stingray, pot as water as you can stand. I've tried. It's not fun, and depends on how they get you, but always look where you're landing. When you go to drop down and drift down, always look where you're landing. You don't want to be like Steve Irwin, which what happened was he was over top of the stingray and it brought up a sting and stabbed him in the heart. And terrible accident. But you always got to look where you're landing. He was doing something different. But for us, look where we're landing, because there's stingrays, there's rays, there's poisonous fish, there's urchins. Look, poisonous fish here locally, we have sculpin. The spines are poisonous. They hurt extremely bad. Same thing with them. Use really hot water to kind of dull the pain. Other places, there's there's frogfish. I think there was the rockfish. They can kill you. So the biggest thing is shuffle. Be very, very gentle. Rockfish are always camouflage. Stonefish. So just be aware. They don't typically like to move either. Any of these rockfish, like stonefish, frogfish, what else? Sculpin, they don't like to move. So please just be aware, go slow, and be gentle when you're landing. And that way, if you do land on something, you might get a sporting chance of like, oh, okay, it'll move before you land on it. If you just come down on it and smash on it, it's not going to help. Same thing with urchins. Urchins are a big one. Urchins, know where you're landing as you come down, and don't come down fast and spook everything, and put your knee right on an urchin. So when you're reaching in a hole after something, say it's a lobster or something else, be very cognizant of where you're putting your hand and your body for that matter. Urchins can be a really good tool to use for reef hunting, like smashing them open. However, they can also hurt really bad, especially even just walking out to dive. Walking out, a way to avoid urchins, I say swim as much as you can. If you're on a coral reef, you don't want to walk on a coral reef and break stuff or step on stuff. Rocks are sharp. It's probably best just for you to get in the water and swim the majority of the way. It actually pays dividends. It limits your risks to stepping on something that would hurt and ruining your day. So I'll say urchins, break them open. Big sheephead love to come in and eat urchins. Some people think that's unethical, I guess. I don't really see that. But hey, it's the same as chumming, which, chumming can cause sharks and everything else. So be cognizant when you do that as well. But the biggest thing with urchins, just watch where you're landing, watch where you're walking, and take your time and go slow. Now, moving on to sticking your hands into places, again, where you have to worry about urchins. Eels are another thing. Eels, again, same thing. Always look where you're going to put your hand. Eels move and they come and go quite a bit. They're actually like, they get attracted to the fish as well. My friend shot a grouper. It went in a hole, and as he pulled it out, there was an eel attached to it. It was gutting it for us. So these things do happen. Another friend went for a lobster, trying to get a lobster, and an eel came out and attacked his hand. Your fingers can look like food to them, okay? So be aware of that. So look where where you're putting your hand, and pay attention. If you get bit by an eel, clean it good, right? And go to a doctor, because they will slice you up, okay? And that's about it as far as poisonous animals, dangerous animals, and things like that. The moral of the story is just pay attention to the environment you're in, and remember, no fish is worth your life. And, make sure if you pull the trigger, you're setting yourself up for success, not getting eaten or beat up or something.
Well, I hope you found that information helpful. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comments and I'll get back to you. Now, if you're interested, the next video in the series is right here.